Hello learners, welcome to Naya Studio. This is live Vidya program for Science and Technology course of NIOS. It's a secondary course. I am Nilam Gupta, course coordinator of Environmental Science. Welcome you all in this live Vidya program. Learners, we have already discussed lesson number 26, that is air and water. As we know that air and water are the abiotic component of the environment. So, during this program, we discussed about we discussed about air and its composition, importance of various air components like oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and we have also discussed air pollution, its sources, and how can we control all these things. And similarly, we have talked about various sources of water, potable and non-potable, and simple method how to non-potable water to become potable water. So, later we gave an idea about water pollution, types of sources of water pollution and its controlling methods. So, lastly we also talked about during that program urgency of water conservation and rainwater harvesting. So, now we are moving to our next module, that is module 7, which belongs humans and environment. So, we will discuss about environment first, means what do you understand or what do you mean by environment. In general, we know environment means everything that surrounds us, like our house, garden, town, shops, hills, rivers, oceans, air, soil, all sunlight and many other things, and we also found plants and animals around us. And when we talk about natural environment, then so all living and non-living things that occur naturally on the earth constitute our natural environment, and life regulated by the environment, and in turn they influence the environment. So, we can say environment with all its component is a vibrant and intricate or complex entity. So, if this is environment, then we need to think twice before doing anything that would disturb the delicate balance between the environment and its various components. But how do we know what affects our activities have on the environment? So, in order to nurture our environment, we need to understand its various components and their relationship. So, we will discuss about this program, what we are discussing during this program, it means objectives. So, ecosystem and examples of interdependence of aquatic and terrestrial ecosystem, relationship between biotic and abiotic component of the environment or an ecosystem, interdependence of autotroph, heterotrophs and phytes in a biotic community. We will also discuss about the importance of food chain, food web, different trophic labels and energy flow in an ecosystem. Lastly, we will try to discuss importance of cycling of minerals. So, as we know that Earth is perhaps the only planet in the solar system that supports life, and the portion of the Earth which sustains life is known as biosphere. So, biosphere is a narrow global zone on, above and below the Earth's surface, encompassing the air, water and land, where all organisms exist and interact with each other. It also connects the atmosphere, hydrosphere and lithosphere into a single self-regulating and supporting system that includes all life forms. So, when we talk about the biosphere, it is a very huge and cannot be studied as a single entity. So, we will divide into many existing functional units, which is known as ecosystem. So, in nature, several communities of organisms live together and interact with each other as well as with their physical environment as an ecological unit. So, now we will discuss about what is ecosystem and its component. So, ecosystem, when we talk about ecosystem, so living organisms draw their nutrition and oxygen for their survival from where? It's from environment. So, in the process for interaction or survival, plants and animals interact with each other and also with their physical environment. So, we can say how can we define ecosystem? So, ecosystem may be defined as a biological environment consisting of all organisms living in a particular area as well as a non-living physical component of the environment with which the organism interact. Who coined this term ecosystem? So, A. G. Tansley in 1935 put forward the concept of ecosystem, and this word ecosystem is derived a Greek word oikos meaning home and systema meaning system. So, an ecosystem is a functional unit of nature encompassing complex interaction between its biotic or living and abiotic or non-living components. So, a natural ecosystem is an assemblage of plants and animals which functions as a unit and is capable of maintaining its identity such as forest, grassland and estuary. Human intervention is an example of a natural ecosystem. Natural ecosystem is totally dependent on the solar energy. So, there are two categories, main categories of ecosystem, that is terrestrial and aquatic. Terrestrial ecosystem found on land, that is forest, grassland, desert and tundra. In case of aquatic ecosystem, plants and animals community which are found in water bodies like pond, lake, river, ocean and sea is known as aquatic ecosystem. And aquatic ecosystem can be further divided into two subgroups: freshwater ecosystem like river, lakes and pond. In case of marine ecosystem, it includes oceans, sea and estuaries. And so, human modified ecosystem may or may not be dependent on the solar energy. In example we can take, in an industry, energy is provided in the form of fossil fuel or electricity or both. So, next slide will be human modified ecosystem. They are agriculture, agro ecosystem, plantation forest, urban ecosystem, rural ecosystem, agriculture, industrial ecosystem, laboratory culture of organisms. All are human modified ecosystem. So, in short we can say all ecosystem that exist in nature are known as natural ecosystem. They can either be terrestrial or aquatic. Grassland, desert constitute the terrestrial ecosystem, while river and oceans form the aquatic ecosystem. And when we talk about the man-made or human design ecosystem, it is an artificial ecosystem, like we plant trees in garden, aquarium, crop fields, kitchen garden, all are human modified ecosystem or an artificial ecosystem. So, now we will study component of an ecosystem and their relationship. We know an ecosystem is constituted by two components, that is non-living and living component. So, accordingly they are termed as abiotic and biotic components. So, abiotic component are the non-physical, non-living physical and chemical factors in the environment of an ecosystem. In case of biotic are the organisms which includes plant, animals, microorganisms including human in an ecosystem. So, there is a table which constitute abiotic and biotic components of an ecosystem. Abiotic components include sunlight, temperature, precipitation, water or moisture, soil and air. But when we talk about the biotic component, it includes primary producer, means plants, herbivores, carnivores, omnivores and detrivores. So, all of these components vary over space and time. So, you must have observed that plants of the coastal region, hilly areas and desert are distinctly different from each other. Do you know why? This is because each one has different abiotic component like temperature, soil and moisture, So, thus we see that the abiotic component affect the various organisms in the environment. So, we know there are two types of factors, that is biotic and abiotic. All are, though both are important for an all type of ecosystem. So, can you now think that how all living beings are totally dependent on the abiotic component of the environment? Yes, you are right. First, green plants manufacture their food with the help of sunlight, carbon dioxide and chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a green pigment which is present on the leaves of the plants. So, herbivores and carnivores including humans are dependent on the food which is produced by the plants, and all organisms like plants, animals and other organisms releases back carbon dioxide, oxygen, water and other nutrients into the plants. So, this not only enrich the soil, but also replenish the atmosphere. So, we will talk about this in the subsequent sections. So, thus we can say that we all eat a bit of sunlight every day. So, now we move to the next section, that is biotic community. Biotic community refers to the population of various kinds of organisms living together and sharing the same habitat. An ecosystem houses several biotic communities which interact with each other. For example, we can observe populations of different kinds of birds, insects and many other animals on a tree living in the same environment, mutually sustaining and interdependence. This assembly of different organisms constitute a biotic community. So, depending on the mode of nutrition, members of any bio community are being categorized into autotrophs, heterotrophs and saprotrophs. So, we will discuss in very brief about all types of the biotic community members on the basis of the mode of nutrition. First, autotrophs. Auto means self and tropho means feature. So, all plant can manufacture their, or we can say all green plants can manufacture their own food by the process of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis we have already discussed little bit earlier. There are certain organisms that do not utilize sunlight, yet can manufacture their food by the process of chemosynthesis, include bacteria, some bacteria. Since the plants provide food to all the animals directly or indirectly, they are called producers. So, autotrophs form the basis of any biotic system as they trap solar energy directly to manufacture their food for all. In terrestrial ecosystem, autotrophs are mainly eutic plants, and in case of aquatic ecosystem, floating plant which is known as phytoplankton and shallow water rooted plant called macrophytes are the examples of autotrophs. When we talk about the heterotrophs, hetero means other and trophs means feeder. Heterotrophs are called consumer also, which feed on plants and animal, and consumers include herbivores that eat plant material and carnivores which eat other animals who eat plants. Next category is known as saprotrophs. Sapro means rotten and trophos means feeder. So, saprotrophs also known as decomposers, feed on dead and decaying material. They break down the complex organic compound of dead plants and animals into simpler form and return them back to the environment. So, decomposers form an important link between the living and non-living component of the ecosystem. Some bacteria and fungi belongs to this category. So, now we see a table or flow chart member of in biotic community includes three categories: autotrophs, heterotrophs and saprotrophs. Heterotrophs are different types: primary consumer, secondary consumers and tertiary consumers. Primary consumers include herbivores, those eat plant. Primary consumers like frog and peacock, and secondary consumer include primary carnivores, and tertiary consumers are secondary and tertiary carnivores includes lion and tiger. So, we have already talked member of a community, living organisms interact that within an environment or in ecosystem. It organized three categories, main categories are autotrophs, heterotrophs and saprotrophs. Autotrophs like plants and algae, they produce their own food through photosynthesis or chemosynthesis, and they form the base of the food chain, providing energy to all organisms. In case of heterotrophs, they depend on food for on other for their food. So, and heterotrophs divided into different labels: primary consumer, secondary consumer and tertiary consumers. Saprophytes or decomposers includes fungi and bacteria. They break down dead organic matter, recycling nutrient back to the environment or in ecosystem. So, when we top, middle and bottom, and all the three layers differ great components. So, water, dissolved oxygen, carbon, food chain, this is the next section. So, a simple way to show as a producer, deer and other succession of organisms in an ecological community that constitute of chains that may be detrivorous, they are grazing food chain, many others. So, grazing food chain is found both in aquatic as well as grassland ecosystem. It is the most common food chain found in the terrestrial ecosystem. So, this is an example of terrestrial ecosystem. You see grass is being eaten by rabbit, rabbit is eaten by wolf, and wolf is eaten by being eaten by lion. When they took a second type of grass eaten by grasshopper, grasshopper is being eaten by frog, frog is eaten by snake, and snake is being eaten by hawk or bird or peacock maybe. So, look at this figure, this is the chain in aquatic ecosystem, phytoplankton, then amoeba, then octopus, then seal, then shark. Second is phytoplankton, zooplankton eaten by crabs, mosquito, prawns, fishes, bigger fish and crocodile. So, now next chain is detritus food chain. It said this chain is start from dead organic matter, and dead organic matter is broken down up into simple nutrients by microorganisms like fungi and bacteria. So, these simple nutrients and decomposers are then consumed by smaller carnivores, which in turn become food for larger carnivores. A small detritus food chain also exists in an aquatic ecosystem. So, however, most animals form a part of more than one food chain and eat more than one kind of food in order to meet their food and energy requirements. So, these interconnected food chains form a food web, and food web is like a bigger, more realistic version of a food chain. Instead of showing just one path of who eats whom, it shows interconnected paths because animals usually eat more than one type of food. So, we will take a little break. After break, we will discuss about food chain, food webs. कितना हुआ, आधा घंटा हो गया? before taking a break, we talk about the ecosystem, interdependence of ecosystem and its abiotic and biotic component. For discussing ecosystem, we have discussed about detail in pond ecosystem, and now then we discuss about the interdependence of the autotrophs, heterotrophs and saprotrophs. Then we have discussed food chain. So, we know there are most animal as a part of more than one food chain and eat more than one kind of food in order to meet their food and food requirement. These interconnected food chains forms a food web. So, now we will discuss about food web. Food web are the more realistic models of energy flow through an ecosystem. We talk about trophic levels. So, trophic levels in an ecosystem are not linear, rather than they are interconnected and make a food web. So, we can say food web is a network interconnected food chains existing in an ecosystem. One animal may be a member of several different food chains. So, what are the significance between food chain and food web? They help it to maintain ecological balance. Second, they help in understanding the feeding relations among organisms, and energy flow and nutrient cycle takes place through them. So, we know that food provide energy, and so thus in a food chain energy is passed from one link to another. So, now we talk about the energy flow in an ecosystem. This energy flow in an ecosystem is unidirectional. It means energy which is transferred from one trophic level to the next does not come back. When a herbivore eats, only a fraction of energy that gets from the plant becomes new body mass. So, rest of the energy is lost as heat as is used up by the herbivore to carry out their processes like movement, respiration, digestion, reproduction and many excretion and many other life processes. So, when the herbivores is eaten by a carnivore, only a small amount of energy is received by the carnivore. Of the energy transfer from the herbivore to the carnivore, same energy will be lost as a heat or used up by the carnivores. So, carnivore that has to eat many herbivores to get enough energy to grow, because of the large amount of energy which is lost at each link, the amount of energy which is transferred gets lesser and lesser as we go up to the food chain. So, energy flow at a different trophic level in an ecosystem. These boxes indicates the standing crop biomass, and pipes, small pipes you are seeing in the flow chart indicates energy flowing. There are term R and N U. NU means not utilized energy and R for is respiration. So, now we talked about the various biogeochemical cycles, and this is the constant need of nutrients there is by the biotic community for their survival, and they take these from the environment. So, nutrients in the form of oxygen, carbon dioxide, phosphorus, sulfur, water, nitrogen exist in a definite amount in the environment, and the amount of these nutrients however varies in the different part of an ecosystem at a given time. But these elements are never lost, and nature has its own capacity or to replenish them in a cyclic manner. So, nutrient locked in the dead remains of the organisms and released back into the soil by retrievers and decomposers. This recycling of the nutrient is called biogeochemical. Movement of these nutrients in a cyclic manner in the environment constitute the biogeochemical cycles or nutrient cycle. Bio is living, geo is rock and chemical is element. So, biogeochemical cycle refers in the cycle is a cycle in which nitrogen, carbon and other inorganic elements of the soil, atmosphere of a region are converted into the organic substances of plants and animals and released back into the environment. And it is specific or it is a cyclic pathway by which a chemical element or molecules moves through the environment, unlike energy flow which is unidirectional. So, there are two important components in a biochemical cycle, reservoir pool and cyclic pool. Reservoir pool means atmosphere or rock which stores large amount of nutrients, and cyclic or compartment of cycle, they are relatively short storage of carbon in the form of plants and animals. So, let us discuss a few biogeochemical cycle during this program. First, carbon cycle. Carbon cycle is a biochemical cycle by which carbon is exchanged between soil, water and atmosphere of the earth, and its most important cycle of the earth, and allows for carbon to be recycled by all of its organisms. And it justifies the saying, what goes around comes around. And carbon cycle has 5 steps: photosynthesis, respiration, decomposition, combustion and impact of human activities. And this is the global carbon dioxide carbon cycle. Photosynthesis, we know green plants in the presence of sunlight utilize carbon dioxide in the process of photosynthesis and convert the inorganic carbon into organic matter in the form of food and release oxygen. A part of the food made through photosynthesis is used by the plant for their own metabolism, and the rest is stored as a biomass which is available to various herbivores, heterotrophs including humans and microorganisms as food. Forests act as reservoir of carbon dioxide. A carbon fixes by the trees remain stored in them for a long time. Due to their long life cycles, a very large amount of carbon dioxide is released through forest fires. Second step is respiration, is carried out by all living organisms. It is a metabolic process by which food is oxidized to liberate energy, carbon dioxide and water, and this released energy from respiration is used for carrying out life processes by living organisms. So, carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere through this process. Third step is decomposition. All the food assimilated by animals or synthesized by plant is not metabolized by them completely. A major part is retained by them as their own biomass, which becomes available to decomposers on their death. Dead organic matter is decomposed by microorganisms, and carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere by decomposers. Combustion means burning of biomass releases carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and there are most important cyclic which produces large amount of carbon dioxide is impact of human activities. So, global carbon cycle has been increasingly disturbed by human activities, particularly since the beginning of industrial era. Large scale deforestation and ever growing consumption of fossil fuels by growing number of industries, power plants and automobiles are primarily responsible for increasing emission of carbon dioxide. So, carbon dioxide has been continuously increasing in the atmosphere due to human activities such as industrialization, urbanization and increasing use of and number of automobiles, and this increased concentration of carbon dioxide in atmosphere, which is a major cause of global warming. Second is nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is an essential component for protein and nucleic acid is in living organisms, and is a biological cycle that describes the transformation of nitrogen and nitrogen containing compound in nature. And atmospheric nitrogen is the biggest source of nitrogen. So, green plants absorb nitrogen in the form of nitrates and nitrites from the soil and water, and animal gets this nitrogen when they feed upon plants. So, nitrogen cycle can be studied in 5 steps: nitrogen fixation, nitrogen assimilation, ammonification, nitrification and denitrification. So, this is the nitrogen cycle, and now we will discuss steps. First, nitrogen fixation. It can be two ways. First, lightning during cloud formation and fix living microorganisms. Nitrogen and oxygen combined with each other to form oxides of nitrogen in the atmosphere by lightning, and these nitrogen oxides then dissolve in the water, rainwater, and reaching on the earth surface become the part of the soil and water. Second process in fixation is free living organisms. By the free living microorganisms, those are present in the soil, and by the symbiotic bacteria in the root nodules of the certain leguminous plants, microbes like blue green algae and bacteria fix this atmospheric nitrogen into nitrites and nitrates, and these nitrogenous compounds are then released into the soil. Second is nitrogen assimilation. Plants absorb nitrogen in the form of nitrates to prepare amino acids, and this nitrogen then taken up by the animals in the form of protein through the food chain. Next step is ammonification. Protein in the body of the animal are broken down into simpler form like urea and ammonia. These are then removed from the body along with the urine and excreta. Dead plants and animals also return nitrogen to the soil as ammonium compounds, and these compounds are then converted into ammonia by ammonifying bacteria. Next is nitrification. Conversion of ammonia into nitrates is known as nitrification. Bacteria like Nitrosobacter and Nitrosomonas found in the soil convert ammonia into nitrate. Some other bacteria which was present in soil also convert ammonia into nitrites. Some of these nitrates and nitrites are again taken up by the plant for their nutrition, and this is the process. Nitrifying bacteria converts ammonia into nitrate, and the bacteria who works on this is Nitrosobacter or Nitrosomonas. Next step is denitrification. Denitrifying bacteria like Pseudomonas and Clostridium living in the soil reduce the soil nitrate or nitrites into nitrogen, which is returned back into the atmosphere. So, this is denitrifying bacteria reduces nitrites and nitrites to nitrogen. So, now can you think of some ways by which nature and human activities are adding nitrogen in the atmosphere? You all know that water is very essential for all living beings, but the earth has a limited amount of fresh water. No organisms can survive without water, and precipitation is the only source of water on the earth. So, we will talk about water cycle. So, water received from the atmosphere on the earth returned back to the atmosphere as water vapor resulting from direct evaporation, and through evapotranspiration the continuous movement of water in the biosphere is known as water cycle or hydrological cycle. As we know that water is not evenly distributed throughout the surface of the earth, we know some are scarce of water and some have plenty of water. Some areas, almost 95% of the total water on the earth is chemically bound into rocks and does not cycle. Out of the remaining 5%, nearly 97.3% is in the oceans, and rest is rest 2.1 exists as polar ice. Driving forces for water cycle are solar radiation and gravity, and evaporation and precipitation are the two main processes involved in water cycle. So, these two processes alternate each with each other. So, this is water cycle. We know water comes from ocean, pond, river, streams or any open surface areas, evaporate by sun's energy, heat energy. Plants also transpire huge amount of water. Water remains in the vapor state in air and forms clouds which drifts into wind. Clouds meets with the air, cold air into a mountainous region above the forest and condense to form rain precipitate which comes down due to gravity. So, have you ever given a thought how the ecosystem are available to us? We gain benefit from some of the resources of our natural ecosystem free of cost. So, that is ecosystem services. We take oxygen from the environment, plant take carbon dioxide from the environment, forest, river and oceans control the climate, and there is also a natural check on the pest by the predator and parasites, thus keep the diseases under control. So, can you live without taking food or right? Answer will be no. So, where do you get from it? Right. Plants and algae trap solar energy for photosynthesis and produce food for all, water, mineral, biomass, fuels, wood required for our daily needs are all provided by the nature. So, think of many more services that are provided by our environment, although our environment provide us with so many valuable resources free of cost, and need of the hour is to appreciate its value and judiciously utilize the services so that we can leave them for our future generation. We walk with our legs, birds fly with their wings, while whales swim with flippers. Why are the limbs different in them? So, you will say we walk on land, birds fly in air and whales live and move in water. So, you are right. So, limbs are adapted to the environment in which they live. So, now we will finish this program. Now, we will come again and discuss this in adaptation and population, explosion and many other topics which belongs to the natural environment in our next program. So, we will take a we will finish this right now. Thank you.